Queer News Tonight goes behind the scenes at the White House Respect for Marriage signing. Since Tuesday, Queer News Tonight has been reporting on the historic signing of the Respect for Marriage Act by President Biden. Queer News Tonight correspondents Todd and Jeff Delmay were on hand for the historic event. Today, that's where Al is. Today, Al Ferguson sat down with Todd Delmay to discuss being at the event and the events that led up to it and what it means for the future.
Well, we have very big news this week in the LGBTQ community, as everyone knows now. Respect for marriage has become the law of the land, signed this week by President Joe Biden. We broadcast the signing ceremony at the White House starting at 3 o'clock and stayed live all the way through it. And we want to show you a little bit about what happened. This is live breaking news from Queer News Tonight. In just moments, we are going to go to the White House for President Joe Biden's signing ceremony of the historic Respect for Marriage Act. Today, Tuesday, December 13th, 2022, may be the most important date so far in LGBTQ+ civil rights.
On June 28th, 2015, the Supreme Court ruled in a historic 5-4 vote in the Obergefell versus Hodges decision to make same-sex marriages legal in the United States.
You know, in context, it's a proud moment for us here at Queer News Tonight. First off, we're broadcasting this story, which may be one of the most important in American history, codifying through the House of Representatives, through the Senate, through the conference, reconciliation between the two, and now we're watching the signing ceremony of President Joe Biden of this. First time it's codified. Very important because we have won in the courts. And over the last number of decades, we've won many cases in front of judges. And now finally, there's codification of marriage. The other thing that's interesting here as we watch these images at the White House is the anchor reporting that we are having from Todd and Jeff Delmay. I just think it's incredibly interesting that they were the context of the 2014 Florida Supreme Court case that ultimately overturned making marriage unconstitutional because it was passed in 2008 by 62% of the voters, and their case that they helped win in 2014, ultimately giving gay marriage the first week in January of 2015. Later, 6 months later, they watch the U.S. Supreme Court do it for all 50 states. And now today, they're reporting for Queer News Tonight at the White House, seeing the final continuation of this process of civil rights for the LGBTQ community as it relates to marriage. I just can't imagine what's going through Todd and Jeff's mind in terms of where we are today.
And it's exciting to note that they were the ones supposed to be discussing this right now, but because they were part of that landmark case, they were actually asked to stand with the president as he signs this. So they are going to be on TV behind President Biden as he's doing the signing, then we'll be talking to them afterward.
As I said, a very exciting moment for LGBTQ, and I'm happy to welcome to Queer News Tonight Todd Delmay. Thank you for joining us. You're back. Are you still on Cloud 9?
Absolutely.
An amazing moment. This is a great opportunity as we watch this historic moment. I know we're going to talk about the ramifications and the what ifs for quite some time. We know what we face in 23 and in 24. But in terms of the celebration of this week, you arrive at the White House, a great opportunity for LGBTQ that get to live this monumentous experience right along with you. And tell us what it was like. You arrive at the White House. What happens next?
Well, we had originally been invited just as part of the crowd, and there was a huge crowd there. Sort of everybody in the movement, everybody that's ever been a part of these sorts of cases was there. But all of the marriage equality plaintiffs from across the country were invited to participate in this sort of special experience of getting to the White House. And we were there a little earlier than everyone else, so that we could kind of do a rehearsal of what was going to happen for the actual ceremony, which meant that we were accessing through the West Wing, coming up into the House and being able to spend time in the residence in the lower levels, not where the president's actually living, but just kind of walking around and enjoying the space. Yeah. And then coming out on those steps on the South Lawn and really kind of getting a sense of what was about to transpire. We were able to take our phones and take pictures and things while we were out there then, but then we were taken back to a holding room where we had to leave them behind because they really wanted to make sure that for that shot of the president signing it and us in the background, that everybody was paying attention and standing upright.
Well, we're showing you all kinds of pictures that both Todd Delmay and Jeff Delmay took at the ceremony. Actually, in full disclosure, as David indicated, anchoring Queer News, we were going to do the interview with you and Jeff live on the lawn. And so you get this surprise to have this additional recognition as being the plaintiff in the the Miami-Dade County case. So you can't use your phones. So we weren't able to talk to you, but you're sending us pictures before and after, which we appreciate. And we're showing many of those pictures now. So you're on the steps behind where President Biden is doing. The program begins, and you're in the White House. One of my favorite shows of all time is The West Wing. Yes. I've seen every episode at least 3 times. Me too. And you have this kind of special walk around of the White House. That must have been really incredibly special.
Yeah, we sort of had all access in some ways. And we were just able to hang out. And like I said, there were lots of marriage equality plaintiffs from other cases, many of whom we had gotten to know in 2014 and 15 when we were in DC for oral arguments at the Supreme Court. So it was just kind of this reunion and this celebratory moment that everybody's kind of back together again once more. And we're watching most of what's happening initially on the television, and then they line us up and we're about to go out, and actually when they start playing Hail to the Chief, which is when the president comes out, that's when we were also ushered out onto the steps. And you come down those steps and you really kind of get a sense of everybody that's there, and we were just, steps away from where the president was coming out himself.
We were very proud because we're showing the event live. We're broadcasting on Happening Out Television Network and our platforms and Roku and Apple, etc. We could not help but notice none of the major networks, none of the major cable cut in live. And so we're sitting there going, wait, no, this is a momentous moment. We're going to show it live. And we couldn't help first notice how joyous the crowd seemed and how big the crowd was. And then I read an AP report minutes after the signing that it was the largest crowd of 2022. What was your reaction of the energy at the White House and the crowd there for the signing?
Everybody was so excited, really. I mean, it was just this palpable energy. As plaintiffs, we're all hugging and just feeling this moment. It's almost surreal, really, to think about, despite everything that we've been through, to think that when we first filed the case in 2014, that 8 years later, we would be standing with the President of the United States codifying this right. I mean, many of us grew up never thinking that we would ever be able to get married. Right. Oh, that'll never happen in our lifetime.
Happen, right.
And to think that we've come so far. President Obama actually said it in his 2015 State of the Union address, to which we were also attendees. And he said, it used to be that same-sex marriage was used as a wedge issue. I mean, remember 2004, the Bush re-election? It was a wedge issue. And it's become the law of the land. And now to take that right, which had been won in the courts, and to actually codify it through an action by both houses of Congress and the president, I mean, it is a really significant win. And that can't be lost on us, despite knowing that the battle is never over. This is never finished. We have to continue to safeguard these rights. But to see that we've come that far that quickly, this would not have been possible without a Democratic Congress and a Democratic president.
Yeah, elections matter is what we watched
For sure.
At the signing ceremony. The other thing that I was curious about was how you were digesting the program that was done leading up to the president coming out and the remarks by the vice president and then the remarks by President Biden. One of the things I was really curious about is the symbolism of the two musical numbers that were done, Sam Smith, but especially Cyndi Lauper. She sings True Colors in a steel guitar bass, so it's more acoustic. And she wrote True Colors at the height of HIV/AIDS in the 1980s, and it has become an anthem for the LGBTQ community. And Cyndi Lauper has talked so much of how proud that the song was adopted by LGBT, of a reflection of the value of showing your true colors through the rainbow. She's singing on the lawn. That must have been an incredible moment for you to watch that and understand the significance of that moment.
Yeah, we were watching it on a big screen TV. We actually left the TV to go to the windows. And if you've ever looked out the White House windows, they're not perfectly smooth. They're very old windows and they're very thick, right? And we could see this sea of people, and there she was standing on the stage in that hot pink outfit. And taking it in that way, that perspective of her and her voice just standing in there, in the middle of this crowd. Yeah, it was a really special moment to feel that energy. And like I said, I just don't want to forget that there were so many other people around us who had been through similar experiences that we had in terms of stepping out and telling your story publicly. I mean, that's part of what won marriage equality was this need to be able to step out of just simply making the argument and telling your story. That's how marriage was actually won, by people talking about their true colors and who they are. President Biden actually talked a lot about that in his remarks, about how, who do you love, right? That's the person that you want to marry and should be able to marry.
I thought it was also moving of how simple his concluding remarks were. He just simply said, in terms of the commitment to this, he came out for gay marriage before the president. He came out in a very controversial way as vice president without, wait, Joe rolling all over the decks. He's come out and said what he says for LGBT. But he just so simply, and in basically his last sentence, we got this done. Let's go sign this bill. I just thought the simplicity of his last words were such a good statement about what we were watching.
And there's a lot of personal connection, I think, for a lot of them. Nancy Pelosi talked about one of actually the first speech I think she gave. I think you may have
on the floor.
On the floor was for LGBTQ rights, and that this was the bookend to her historic career.
Yeah.
President Biden talked.
It was a warm moment from us watching as we were anchoring here. It was a really warm moment among the crowd of the thanks and gratitude to Nancy Pelosi of what she has done for LGBT.
And President Biden talked even about his son, Beau, who as Attorney General had pushed for LGBTQ rights.
Yeah.
I think it's in his heart. We oftentimes think about President Biden as being someone who's very familiar with loss and grief, but you could also say that he's very familiar with trauma, right? And being able to understand the trauma that I think Clarence Thomas's words inflicted on us, among every other thing that's been going on in recent years. But to be able to really take it very personally. And we heard from staff, actually, that were saying that this event was very important to him. It was important that it not just be any old signing ceremony, that anybody and everybody that was part of this should be invited. It was important to him to make sure that marriage equality couples like ourselves, that we were included in this way. And not only were we given a space to participate in it more publicly by standing on the steps behind him, but also when he came through the crowd and was able to talk to people, that there was nothing rushed about it. Like, he really took his time with every couple and every family as he went down the line.
And from my seat, to be honest with you, because Been around. I've seen dog and pony shows before. This definitely was not that. It was a situation where you could feel the intention of bringing everybody right along with us in celebration. It's one of the reasons we were very happy that you and Jeff accepted in terms of participation with Queer News Tonight, so we could bring this to South Florida and the LGBTQ community. I'm curious in terms of the impact of the day on how you think LGBT will think about this day. I've read a lot. I'm a big student of history. I have read a lot that the people that participated, especially in that first and second day of the riots in June of 1969 at Stonewall, had no real consequence of understanding of what really was happening.
Yeah.
It was so important that they didn't really pay attention to the big issues of importance. They were worried about the moment of the moment. In some instances, I kind of feel we might be watching the same thing in LGBT right now. Of this moment has come so significant. Where do you think this day that you just participated in at the White House and this signing is going to sit in the overall history of LGBT?
Well, that's a very good question, because you're right. We oftentimes don't see the real importance of a moment except through the lens of history. But I think we can put it up there certainly as one of the, sort of touchstone moments when something really significant happened. Like I said a moment ago, we would have never imagined this 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we wouldn't have imagined this necessary 6 months ago before the overturn.
I grow up in the height of Fauci and Larry Kramer AIDS. This is an impossible day in those days. Impossible.
And yet anything felt possible in that moment, right? It felt like all the work that had been done by countless people, not only people who were there, of course, people who couldn't be there, and that includes generations before us who fought for these kinds of rights that led to this moment.
Harvey Milk contributes in one way. I mean, he's not there, but he's there.
And actually Judith, who is Edie Windsor's widow, she was there. It was nice to see her again. So yeah, we oftentimes think that, we do this little thing, right? We don't always necessarily think of ourselves as an activist. But winning these things is not pushing the boulder up the hill all at once. Sometimes it is inch by inch, moment by moment.
Sometimes it rolls backwards.
Sometimes it rolls back a little bit, but we keep leaning in and keep pushing forward. And no matter what people did, no matter how small they might think it was or will be, it ultimately leads to where we are going. Even if there are challenges down the road, this win is a win. And it's a big win.
A big win.
And it's something that cannot be taken away. The history has been made.
That's the history of it. The other thing that I think is a great story, which I want you to make mention of, is all of the cool things that happen. I know you had to fangirl or fanboy or fan they in moments of your experience at the signing of Respect for Marriage. Who was the big, oh my God?
Well, we got to meet, obviously, the president, but first Dr. Biden came through, and that was sort of
Dr. Biden's the real star,
right? She's pretty cool, and she came through quickly, and she thanked everyone and sort of shook hands with everybody.
Michelle was always the big star.
Oh, really?
Same there. Well,
Michelle wasn't there. Barack wasn't there, but and then the vice president and her husband came through, and I have to say we had such a special moment with them as well. So my husband had been instructed by his cousin Kamala to say hello to Kamala. And of course, Jeff comes from a Jamaican family, as does Kamala. And so they had a really nice bonding moment talking about that and about their families. But most importantly, what we shared with them, which I thought was a really neat moment for us as two couples, is that we talk a lot about respect for marriage as being codifying same-sex marriage, but it also codifies interracial marriage.
That's right.
And the
Clarence
vice president,
Thomas is finally safe.
Yes, right. But the vice president and her husband obviously being an interracial couple, Jeff and I being an interracial couple. And when I highlighted that for her, she just beamed, right? And I don't know, it's just a really nice beautiful moment that we were able to share as two couples. Actually, she started to move on after that, and she was kind of starting to talk to the couple next to us. And we got another moment with the second gentleman. He actually was supposed to be in town here to campaign for Val Demings, and was going to be at our office as part of that event, and then it canceled at the last minute. So we learned that his father had a heart attack. That's why he didn't come. Father's well, everything's fine. But again, just the real family sense that you got from both of them. It was really
it's kind of hard to say anyone else trumps the president and the vice president, but let's try. Let's take a moment. Anybody else that was just absolute, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm having this moment?
Well, the president.
Well, besides the president and the vice president, I got it.
Right. So I want to talk about seeing the president, though, because we had been at an event with him back in, like right before the election, like not even 6 weeks ago, in Hallandale. He'd come to town, and we happened to be on the front of the line, and you know, it all happened so quickly. We barely shook his hand and said hello, and you know, he was moved along by Sacred Service. But yesterday, you could tell he was really making sure that he was taking the time and spending time with people. And when he got to us, and you know, what's your name and where are you from, and we stood sort of the three of us in I would call it an embrace. Like we were just so close, and seeing him and just really feeling his love for this moment and wanting to know about us and what this meant to us. And, you know, in those moments when you're just saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, and we appreciate what you've done, and him turning the tables back and saying, no, thank you, right? That is just, it's so gratifying to be able to have a president who is willing to be up close and personal and hear your story and want to know you. I just can't say enough good things about him and about that moment. And like I said, he was doing that with everyone.
I think, to be honest with you, I remarked on it when she said it. Vice President Harris said that President Biden has brought the LGBTQ community to every level of government. That is a factual statement, more than any other president in history, including President Obama. President Biden has walked the walk in terms of his support for LGBT at every level, which is the excitement you're saying. So one more time, I'll give you the opportunity beyond the president and the vice president, well, or whoever that you thought, just wow, this, I'm in the room with this person and I'm fanning out.
Well, Debbie, who is our congresswoman, was there too.
Debbie Wasserman.
Yes, so Debbie, she, you know, she has been very good to us.
Yes, and Hollywood.
In Hollywood, and after we got married in 2015, she invited us as her guests to the State of the Union. Got to experience all that with her. So we were sort of joking. I said we've taken pictures with her, with, you know, John Lewis, and with very famous people in very famous places on the Supreme Court steps. We needed to have our White House picture as well. Yeah. But we didn't get to meet, like, we didn't get to really meet anyone else. Yeah. But just being in the room and seeing everyone, and like I said, you know, a lot of the people that we were sort of fanning out over were people like Evan Wolfson. Yes. You know, people that people wouldn't necessarily know who that is, but Evan Wolfson was behind the Freedom to Marry organization. And he had actually, I don't know if you know the story, but when he was in college in Harvard, he had a paper that he decided he was going to write a paper on how to win marriage equality for same-sex couples. And it seemed like such a ridiculous idea that he had actually had trouble finding a sponsor on the faculty who would support this paper. He finally found somebody, and he wrote this paper. And it was the blueprint to how marriage equality was won. And it was basically going into every state and going and finding couples who were willing to step forward and tell their story. And that was really the crux of everything, was when people demonize somebody for being different, it's one thing to demonize that idea, that concept over there.
Making it personal.
It's another to look at somebody in their face and see them and hear their story and not see their humanity and not want to give them what they seek. Yeah,
well, you know, it seems to me the bottom line of this is, first, it's a win We get the win, but it gives us some warmth to get through the Christmas holidays, the embracement of LGBT, the celebration that you saw on the lawn. We all got to be able to watch the event and watch yours and Jeff's, your husband's, participation in it. Very exciting. We have to tell everybody, when I saw Todd yesterday, you had a very interesting moment for me, and you probably it didn't wash over you the way it did me. First time I saw you, you had just gotten off basically the plane
Yes.
back from Washington, and I hugged you and started going into reporter mode, asking you questions about it, and your conversation about the interaction that you and Jeff and the president had was an emotional moment for you, and I could tell. Todd ran for State House, only lost by 600 votes. It was a very tough loss. That sting is not completely gone away, I imagine. But then you have this experience, and then I watched that yesterday. And from your level of experience and participation with the Hollywood LGBTQ Council and being the ED of My Hollywood Pride and the advocacy that you do, we're going to talk next year about a lot of new things that are going on in your life. It was nice to see even the potential of old jaded Todd Delmay being excited about something, and then therefore the entire LGBTQ community can be excited about what's happening.
It's been an extraordinary year.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been lots of highs and lows this year, especially when it comes to elections.
Yeah.
Both primaries and generals.
Yeah.
Lots of highs and lows. Things that you take with you, and those are sort of the things that feed you for the fight.
Yeah, that's right. I keep telling all of my friends, let's relish this moment. Let's take it to enjoy and get through the holidays. And when January starts, we're all ready to start fighting again. Todd Delmay, thank you very much. We're going to talk a lot to Todd in the next month, because at the what day? January
29th.
January 29th, Sunday, January 29th, the second My Hollywood Pride is coming, and we're going to celebrate. Of course, we've reported the news that Hollywood has a second consecutive year of being evaluated as a 100% equality city in the United States by the HRC, which is great news. And we're going to be talking a lot about My Hollywood Pride. And so, Todd Delmay, congratulations. Please extend our congratulations to Jeff. And we thank you for helping us personalize this momentous moment at the White House for the signing of President Biden's signing of Respect for Marriage.
Thanks.
Thanks, Todd.